All right, let's just get right into it. We have all been there. A project kicks off, everything seems crystal clear, and then it starts to drift. Slowly, quietly. Well, today we are going to pull back the curtain on this silent project killer, what we call scope creep, and give you a real blueprint for how to stop it, for good. I can't think of a better way to describe how scope creep really works. It's almost never one big, single event that sends a project flying off the rails. No, it's way sneakier than that. It's all these tiny, harmless little additions and changes that, one by one, just bleed your project dry. Your budget, your timeline, and yeah, even your team's will to live. Does that feel familiar? If you're nodding your head right now, you are definitely not alone. That feeling, that sense that you're trying to build something, but the finish line just keeps getting moved further away, that is the classic textbook symptom of unmanaged scope. And it's not just frustrating, it's everywhere. So, to actually fix this, we have to get super clear on what we're up against. You can't fight an enemy you can't see, right? So, in this first part, let's give this thing a name and really define what we're dealing with. Okay, so here's the official definition. But I want you to pay close attention to that last part, without a corresponding adjustment. See, change itself isn't the problem. In fact, it can be a good thing. It's the unmanaged change, the kind that you're not getting more time or more money for. That's the real project killer. And this is so important because not all change is bad. You got to know the difference. Over here, we have scope creep, our main villain, born from those informal, hey, can you just add this requests? Then you've got its sneaky cousin, gold plating. This is a hidden threat where your own team starts adding cool features nobody asked for. But then you have the hero of the story, scope change. This is healthy, it's planned, it's documented, it's agreed upon. So the goal isn't to stop change, it's to kill the creep and champion healthy evolution. Okay, so now we know what it is. Let's talk about why this is such a massive deal. The fallout from scope creep isn't just a few small headaches. We're talking about a domino effect that can have a huge financial and operational impact on your business. Let's really look at the numbers here. Just take a second to let this sink in. According to the Project Management Institute, half of all projects run into scope creep. This isn't some rare black swan event. It's literally a coin toss every single time you start something new. If you don't have a plan, the odds are just not on your side. And the financial toll? It's just staggering. For every $1 billion, billion with a B, invested in projects, a whopping 97 million of it is just lost, wasted, gone. And a huge driver of that loss is poor scope management. It's a massive systemic problem. And let's zoom in on just one project. If you look at large IT projects, they are especially bad for this. They run, on average, 45% over budget. Look at that. You plan for 100%, you get the budget, but you end up paying almost 1.5 times what you planned. For any business leader, that is an absolutely brutal number to face. But the cost goes so far beyond just money. Scope creep destroys timelines. Barely half of projects actually finish when they said they would. There's a huge human cost. We're talking stress, burnout, people quitting. It completely erodes trust between your team and your stakeholders. And maybe the worst part? It kicks off this vicious cycle where you start cutting corners just to get things done, creating all this technical debt that comes back to bite you on your next project. Okay, that's the problem. It is big, it's expensive, and honestly, it's just demoralizing. But here's the good news. It's totally solvable. So let's pivot from the problem to the solution. And it's all about a proactive 3-pillar strategy to take back control. All right, pillar number 1, and you could argue it's the most important one, the statement of work, or SOW. Now, this cannot be just some document you sign and file away. Think of it as the unshakable foundation for your entire project. This is where clarity begins. So what does an airtight SOW even look like? Well, for starters, it always begins with the why, not just the what. You have to define the business goal, and you have to use specific language. No more vague stuff like make it faster. We're talking measurable criteria. You define exactly what done looks like. And, maybe just as crucial, you explicitly state what is out of scope. This prevents so many misunderstandings down the road and forces everyone to get on the same page from day one. So once you got that solid foundation, you need a way to handle change when it inevitably comes up. That's pillar number 2. And listen, the goal here isn't to just say no to every new idea. Not at all. It's to make sure that every single change is a conscious, strategic decision. And you do that with a simple 5-step process that turns chaos into order. It all starts with a formal request, no more drive-by suggestions. Then you analyze the impact on time, cost, everything. That leads to a decision based on actual data. And if it's approved, you officially update the plan. That's it. This makes every single trade-off totally visible and completely intentional. Now for our final pillar. This is the one that makes the other two actually work. It's the engine. You can have the best documents, the best processes in the world, but if you don't have a culture of clear, constant communication, they're going to fail every time. Building this culture really comes down to 3 basic habits. First, you define roles. Who approves things? Who just needs to be kept in the loop? Get it in writing. Second, you need a rhythm, a cadence for communication, daily stand-ups, weekly updates, so alignment becomes a habit. And finally, you need a single source of truth. One place, one tool where everyone goes for the real story. No more confusion. Okay, now I know what some of you might be thinking. What about Agile? Isn't that just a recipe for chaos and constant change? Well, that's a really common myth, but the truth is actually the complete opposite. When you do it right, with discipline, Agile is one of the most powerful scope management tools you have. Here's why. It's a totally different way of thinking. Traditional projects, waterfall projects, try to lock in the scope from day one. And what happens? Time and cost almost always spiral out of control. Disciplined Agile completely flips that. It locks in your time with sprints and your cost with a fixed team size, and it treats scope as the variable you manage. This forces you constantly to prioritize the most valuable work inside a predictable box. In fact, Agile's built-in ceremonies are actually scope controls in disguise. Your product backlog? That forces every new idea to be weighed against everything else. The time box sprint? That locks the scope for a short period, protecting your team from distractions. And the sprint review? That's your constant feedback loop, letting you make smart adjustments based on real, working software, not just theory. So, we've walked through the problem, the real costs, and the 3 pillars of a solution. Now, let's just boil all of that down into a simple, practical checklist you can literally use on your very next project. When you get right down to it, it's about 5 key things. First, insist on that airtight SOW. Don't start without it. Second, build a real, formal change control process. Third, define those roles from the very beginning. Fourth, use disciplined Agile as a tool for control, not an excuse for chaos. And finally, above all else, make radical transparency and communication your top priority. That's it. That's the playbook. And that really just leaves us with one last question to think about. Scope creep loves ambiguity. It thrives in the gray areas. It is defeated by clarity. When you put these practices into place, you stop gambling and hoping for a good outcome, and you start building one on purpose with predictability right from the start. The choice is yours.